Today I want to share with you some quick tips around yearbook sales and ad sales. And when it comes to yearbook sales, it's just important to understand kind of what we call the voice of the customer. And this is what we find when we survey our consumers, which are your parents who are buying the yearbooks, and some of the key things that they tell us that have to be incorporated into our overall strategy for selling yearbooks. So I want to just share a couple of these with you real quick. Make sure that in your specific in-school approach to selling yearbooks that we are on track with where our parents tell us we need to be. And the first thing that parents tell us is that the yearbook has to be interesting. That is really a comment about the coverage of your pages, who's covered, what's covered, and so they want to see their kids and their kids' friends. And so it really encourages us to encourage you, advisors, to really put a lot of time into thinking through how you're incorporating more students more times, because it makes it a more interesting and makes it a more relevant product to try to sell to the consumer. The other thing that they tell us is that the yearbook that you're selling, it just can't be the same price all year long. It can't be the same price in April as it is in August, because in that scenario, there's no financial motivation for them to buy early. So you're really enticing them to procrastinate and buy late. Yearbooks that are bought later in the year put the most risk on the school, because many times you're committing to those copies that are unsold. And so the feedback that we get from parents is that a couple of bucks is not going to sway them to buy, but it can persuade them to buy sooner. And what I mean by that is, like, if you charge $30 for your yearbook, if you go up to $35 next year, those few dollars is not going to keep them from buying. So if you haven't gone up on the price of what you're charging and your margin in your budget is a little tight, then don't be afraid to go up a few dollars. The people that still want a yearbook are going to buy a yearbook. But what it does mean is that if you have different price points or sale points throughout the year, then that will motivate parents to buy at different times. So what we encourage you to do is have at least one, if not more than one, tiered pricing points throughout the year. So at the beginning of the school year, maybe for the first 2 to 6 weeks of the school year, have a back-to-school sale where it's less at that point than it will be at any other time of the year. So maybe that's your $35 yearbook offer, for example, and then if they wait until after Labor Day, then it goes up $5 to $40 in this example. And then if they wait until later in the year, in the spring, then maybe it's another $5 more. So it's $45. So the marketing message becomes that it's a $45 yearbook that's on sale for $35 back to school, or for $40 up until another date. What this is doing, again, is consumer marketing. It's on sale, and it is encouraging them to buy sooner rather than later. The other thing that parents told us not to do is not to ask them to buy at the end of a month, because that's when they tend to have less money available. And so if your deadline for purchasing is set up on the 30th of the month, you're likely to get less sales than if you set up your deadline to be maybe like the first Friday after the first of the month. Those we find are great deadlines to give, because it gives them the entire week, and it gives them several days after a payday to make their purchases when they have money in their account. And certainly they tell us that purchasing has to be easy. Buying yearbooks has never been easier with our plans, whether it is online or in school. We give them lots of great options, and we also have lots of options for how to communicate with parents. So if you're not taking advantage of the options that we have for email marketing, for push notifications onto their phones, for direct mail, for yard signs to attract them in the car rider lines and on-campus events, banners that we have, flyers, posters. If you're not taking advantage of all of that in some way, make sure you talk with me about what the best options are for you. So these are some things that are the voice of the customer when it comes to yearbook sales. Now, when it comes to ad sales, I have a couple of just basic tips for students who are out there selling those business ads. Number one is that A effort will produce A results, meaning that those students that make the most effort will have the most success in getting the ad sales. Advisors, the lesson for this from a teaching standpoint is that if the grade does not reflect in some way their effort towards ad sales, then you're not going to get their effort. It's the same with any other class. If there's no consequence in their grade, if they don't turn a paper in on time, then they're going to turn it in late. If there's no consequence on their grade, if they don't meet their goal for ad sales, then they're more than likely you're going to have some who will not make it. So students, another tip for you is never take no from someone who can't tell you yes. If you walk into a business and you determine quickly that there's someone there that can't tell you yes, so the point here is ask, is there a manager in? And if you're talking with someone that cannot tell you yes, then don't let them tell you no. Don't let them run you off if they can never tell you yes in the first place. If you are told that there's not a manager in, then make sure you ask the right follow-up questions. Ask, who is the manager, so you find out who exactly you should be talking to, who can make a firm yes or no decision, and then find out specifically when they will be there next, because often these managers may only be in once a week, or a certain time of day. So make sure you maximize the time that you're spending going to these businesses by finding out the who and the when on that first visit in. And then be able to handle a no. You're going to be told no. It is inevitable. But if you are told no, do not let that totally shut you down from going to the next business. Some businesses just cannot support, and that's okay. But when you're told no, take it gracefully and move on to the next business. The sun will come up the next day. You will not lose any sleep that night, I assure you. And the best tip that I can probably give you, students, for making the most of your ad sale opportunities is to ask the right question. Many times you go in and you ask the question, would you like to buy an ad for the yearbook? And honestly, in their mind, they're thinking, no, I really don't want to buy an ad for the yearbook. So if the answer to that question is no, often, then let's not ask that question. I want you to do something that I call changing the ask. And consider rewording your request to be something more like this. I would love for you to be one of the community sponsors for the Central High School Journalism Program's yearbook this year. The levers that I'm really pulling on there is I'm not giving them kind of a yes-no question. I'm making a statement that we would love for you to support us. And what I'm asking them to do is not just to buy an ad, but to be a sponsor, be a community sponsor. I'm connecting with those words the relationship between the community and the school and asking them to be a sponsor for the school. And specifically, I'm asking them not to be a sponsor just for a book, but I'm asking them to sponsor an educational aspect of the school. So what I'm doing is I'm connecting you to the request, because I'm asking them to support the journalism program and you're representing that. I'm asking them to support your education in that journalism program, and by doing so, what they're doing is putting an ad in the yearbook. So kind of repackage how you ask the question when you go in, and I think you will find a little more success. Advisors, I'm just going to encourage you to build in accountability, whether you require a financial goal for them to meet or whether you just have a number of contacts they have to make. I have a really tried and true tool that I like for schools to use that is going to maybe clearly communicate with the business what you're asking. Some signatures on there that make it look really official, the ability to print it on your letterhead to make it look really official, a summary for the student of if they get nervous, they can kind of look down at the request for the keywords. It has a summary of the offers, and then most importantly is at the bottom of this form, it has a place where the business owner has to mark, yes, I'll support the local school, or no, I will not, and sign the form. So the students would come back with one of these signed, yes or no. And so I really feel like this is great accountability, because even if they get a no, you have proof that they've made contacts. And I have found that if students will give a effort in making contacts, they will see the results. And whether you're grading on a dollar figure or not, at least if you know that they've made contacts, you can more fairly and accurately pass on a grade for this. And then lastly, when you're creating your pages, make sure that it's not just what I call wall-to-wall ads, but you're doing some blended coverage. You're putting some other content and photos. So in this case, just a top bar going across with some student candid pictures mixed in with the business ads. This gives people reason to go to these pages. It's called driving visual traffic through your ad pages so that those pages aren't just skipped over. So basic tips for you today on selling yearbooks and selling ads. If you have any questions, let me know.